Okay, The Spy and the Traitor by Ben Macintyre. This is a spy thriller, nonfiction spy thriller. Ben Macintyre wrote the book Under Siege that I also read. He's written a bunch of others. You might want to Google Ben Macintyre. He's got some great CIA books, intelligence books, officer, and to anybody in intelligence. Kim Philby, he wrote a book about, who was the MI6 officer that was the double agent. So he's probably connected to a lot of people in Georgetown. But he sits in a bar and gets this information and then writes these stories about it, I'm sure. But great author, a great style of writing. I think the book was well done. It goes chapter to chapter following Oleg Gordievsky, a Russian double agent that is lured by the West, but in some ways the West actually failed to recruit him when they should have. But he liked culture, he liked classical music, he liked the Western culture as a whole. So he goes to Denmark from Russia as a KGB agent from Soviet Union at the time, and he gets exposed to these things and he goes, wow, I like this, and he starts to ideologically fall out with communism, and his whole family and lineage of KGB, he has to make a decision about, am I going to go work for the West and remain a KGB agent? Am I just going to defect, or am I going to get out of the KGB? What I found interesting about this book was, one, how it unfolds. So it's like a spy thriller, but it is real. It's a real story. So I liked that aspect of it. One of the things I will knock just off the surface, not going to spoil anything, but these little things in the middle, where you got the pictures, there's two sections of those. If you don't want to spoil, like the ending and stuff, these are out of order, so they'll tell you the ending even though you're only a third of the way through the book, so be careful as you read it. But if you avoid those, it will unfold like a spy thriller that you don't know how it's going to end. So, and I wish I would have known that. I wish I hadn't seen some of the stuff that he gave away early in the book through the pictures. So be aware of that. But I would recommend this book big time. I thought Ben Macintyre, he wrote Under Siege too, which is about the Iran embassy in London that was taken over right after the Iran hostage crisis happened in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And it goes through the SAS, their attempt to rescue these hostages from the Iran embassy. And his structure in that book was sort of similar, where he it's sort of a thriller style writing, even though it's a true story, which I like a lot. So if you like that kind of writing, then Ben Macintyre has done a lot of books that way. He's got some great stuff on YouTube about this story. If you go and type in Ben Macintyre, Spy and the Traitor, he has some sit-downs that are over an hour long where he talks about Oleg Gordievsky and this story and how he got some of the details. But some of the things that stuck out to me were just the really high drama times of where Oleg had to make hard decisions. And I actually should have earmarked the page where there was some beautiful writing, but I can't find it. But Oleg contemplates whether, when he's deceiving his second wife and deciding whether or not to take his wife and his children to defect to the West, he chooses not to take them. And it's hard to imagine being in that position and choosing not to take them. It was hard not to judge him for doing so, and apparently he told Ben through interviews that it was for their safety, which it could have been, but also hard to imagine making that decision. So that was one thing that stuck out to me. And Oleg, the KGB agent, actually puts in here, is it like worse to intellectually lie to your partner or physically deceive them? Which was worse, intellectual deception or physical deception? And I thought, what a self-aware question to ask in terms of relationship and love and the effect it's going to have on that partner. I thought that was really, really well done, really well said. So I can't tell if he is high and mighty about himself and he's doing the right thing and he's working for the West, or if it's like intriguing for him to do. He likes thinking that he's in the right. But he never took money. He never, so maybe he did. Maybe it was on principle. And obviously Ben writes him as a character of principle and actually contrasts him to a CIA agent named Aldrich Ames that took everything and defected for money. So he sort of draws a parallel between the two in a stark contrast. So Ben's perspective is that he acted on principle. He helped deter nuclear threats amongst the Soviets and the Americans during the Cold War. And he did. He gave information to Margaret Thatcher on how to speak at the funeral, and he met with Ronald Reagan on alerting the U.S. that the Soviets believed that the U.S. was the aggressor in the nuclear race. And so, intelligence did make an impact on diplomacy during that time because of Oleg Gordievsky, which rarely, and Ben makes this point, rarely does intelligence and secret spies and the CIA and MI6 and all these agencies, rarely do they make a big impact on diplomacy that we know of, like a major impact, where they're meeting directly with the leaders of the world. So I thought that was cool. And just the whole unfolding of this story, I'll say this, if you read it, if you've not, it comes to a point where there's an escape plan, and the escape plan is so unbelievably complex, it's just so unlikely that it would ever work. I mean, they have some of the coolest things that I really enjoyed about this book were the intelligence tactics that they use. They hit the shoes of Oleg Gordievsky with radioactive dust when he returned to Moscow so that they can trace the radioactive material to see where he's been and who he comes into contact with. I thought some of what they call dry cleaning, which is getting rid of the tails that are following you by traveling quickly from train to train to train and getting lost in crowds and making sharp turns. All of that was fascinating. The signaling that they do in the intelligence community, where Oleg is to stand on a street corner with a plastic bag from the supermarket that is a certain color, and he has to, fly that signal and then look for somebody that's been going by for 7 years in a row every Tuesday. Okay, every Tuesday somebody connected to the MI6 goes by this flag spot to see if he's flying a signal of help me. We need to meet. And 7 years every Tuesday they don't miss, and they have to have a chocolate bar and a hat so that when they come in by the store, Oleg would recognize that they saw the signal if he sees somebody in a hat eating a Mars bar. And it's so specific. And then 3 days later, they just know to meet each other at a chapel. They're going to brush shoulders and exchange a message. And this is how the intelligence communities and signaling between them work. I mean, it was really fascinating. So that was cool. But overall, that's it. That's all I'll say. There's so much more I'll say. But the intellectual comment he made about, is it physical deception? Is it intellectual deception, which is worse? I thought that was interesting. Choosing to take them or not. The escape plan, I won't tell you what happens, but just the plan itself was absurd and fascinating. And the way it unfolds, I mean, it had a lot of aspects going for it. I found myself the last third really going, ooh, I want to finish this. I don't want to put this down. So that was fun. I hadn't had that in a while. So I've read 2 of Ben Macintyre's books. All right, so this is The Spy and the Traitor, the greatest espionage story of the Cold War, Ben Macintyre. Yeah, I mean, look, he's written A Spy Among Friends and Rogue Heroes. He's written the Iran book, The Siege, The Prisoners of the Castle, Agent Sonia, Spy Among Friends, Double Cross, Operation Mincemeat, ooh, I'd like to read that one, and Agent Zigzag. So he's just an intelligence author, seems to be. So, yep, very good. Ben Macintyre, well done. Hey, go check out his YouTube videos talking about this stuff. It's very interesting. And Oleg's got awards and some medals in London, but he lives, that was another fascinating thing. He's still alive. He lives in London, but in protective custody, basically, with security all around him because they think that, unlikely, but the KGB may try to poison him one day in revenge for what he did, to make an example, but they think it's beyond that now. But for a period of time, seemed like he was a high-risk threat. So he still lives pretty incognito in London, which I thought was interesting. But Spy and the Traitor, Ben Macintyre, check it out.